one that gets high ratings from critics and audience alike. It's Father Mark Davis. We're going on the mark with Father Mark Davis right now. Good morning to you, Father. How are you?
And happy almost St. Patrick's Day.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Oh, yes, I don't want to know what my Rotten Tomatoes rating would be.
Have you ever had one thrown at you?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it must be good.
I used to love to go to the movies, but I don't think I've been in a movie theater since COVID.
Right.
And then in just, I think, and the movie that won the most I hadn't even heard of, I think the relationship between movies and people have changed since so many of the new movies can be on Netflix or Prime within 3 or 4 weeks. I think it's different. I also think critics, the criteria of someone who is judging a movie is someone who's seen 9,083 movies a day, you know, and so they often judge movies not necessarily of what we who only watch one once in a while may judge, but they're saying this movie is different than everything that's gone before it, or this movie has great perspective of a camera, or this movie technically has done something different, but that doesn't necessarily mean that any of us would necessarily be emotionally or spiritually moved by it.
Well,
and so
that's a different explanation than mine.
It's just kind of like I don't know if I don't study art like painting, I don't know necessarily if I would see something the same as someone who's an art critic, but sometimes I'm frustrated that if an artist paints something and I have no clue what it is, I'm thinking, hey, artist, will you please give me a clue of what I'm supposed to do with this?
See, and I like your explanation better than mine because mine is just they're idiots, and that's not very kind at all. And so yours is a far kinder, well thought out opinion.
But no, but it is a magician watches, someone who does anything. Any sport where you know a lot about something, you're going to critique it or look at it in criteria that other people aren't. But but the bottom line is, does it make any sense to anyone?
Right.
And I think that's what Jesus was kind of getting at, with this whole story with the man born blind, that so often people who say in his day were religious leaders were kind of, that we're not really seeing God right in front of them.
Amen.
Ron
the way
mentioned,
you circled that whole thing back around is pretty good.
Well, Ron mentioned St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Our big feast day is tomorrow, the 17th. We're going to have masses, of course, at 8:45, but we'll have a 2 o'clock mass with the kids, and we'll have a carnival, a big feast day. And my favorite Irish joke, I think, of all time, and I'm sure you've heard it, but I just love the one about Paddy, who's in Dublin, and he has a court date because I think he might have been driving, with a little intoxication a few months ago, and he is panicking because he can't find a parking space to be able to get to the courthouse. He says, oh God, please help me find a parking space. Please, God, if you can help me find a parking space, I swear I'll give up me drinking. I'll go back to church. And then just then, someone pulled out, and then he pulled right in and he said, oh God, thanks a lot, but I found one myself.
I love it.
Oh, Patty.
I just love that.
Yeah.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
God,
I think, the thing about St. Patrick that I don't think, everyone thinks about St. Patrick, about chasing all the snakes out of Ireland that were never there, and talk about, talking about the Trinity with a shamrock, but they forget that he was English and he was captured and enslaved as a shepherd when he was young escaped and went back to England. And then when he became a priest, he was sent to Ireland to place the people who enslaved him in the first place.
Right.
And like, he was like a modern day Jonah who had to go where he didn't want to go.
Right.
And he changed their hearts because out of pity for them, which is so powerful. And he obviously wasn't blind to God, as opposed to this pilot. So there was a flight, in an airport, and everybody was on the plane, and they saw coming across the tarmac a guy who looked like a pilot who had a seeing eye dog, and this is, and is this a joke? And he got on the plane and went into the cockpit. Then a little while later, the co-pilot came, and he had a stick and dark glasses, and he looked like he was blind. And they said, "What's going on?" And then the plane started up. They went down the runway, but pretty soon they realized they weren't getting up in the air, and they're going right for a big body of water right next to the airstrip. And right when they're about to go in the water, the people on the aisle seats, they're all there screaming and yelling. And then the airplane flies up into the air smoothly. And the co-pilot turns to the pilot and says, "Bob, one of these days they're not going to scream and we're all in trouble."
Oh, my goodness. That's ridiculous. Oh, my goodness.
So think about that scenario, is that the pilots are blind and they're relying on the screams to be able to know when to go up in the air. So they're kind of faking it. They're trying to fly the plane. They don't want to die themselves, but they're faking it. They don't really know. They may be doing their best, but they're really blind, and they're having to kind of wing it. And so the real question in that scenario, who hired them as pilots? And so if we apply it to Jesus's situation with the Pharisees and the scribes and the people that ran the Jewish religion, here he is, the Messiah that they were promised, and that they were literally blind. And I'm sure he was frustrated, but also he probably understood that, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They just are blinded to the reality." These leaders were really believing that this man who was born blind as a punishment, as opposed to a specific mission to be able to see the glory of God, like every single one of us. They were blind in so many ways that they literally were hanging on to the man-made, enforcement of the Sabbath instead of seeing that God was in their midst. So God calls us to be unblinded, to be able to see him and proclaim him in everything that we do. God bless you. St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thanks, Father.